欢迎收看无话BOOT谈，我是米姐。
那我们现在是到惠比寿，
对，惠比寿，东京的惠比寿地区。
感觉我们现在就是有一个目的地要前进。
对，我们今天来到 Jelado，
没错。
如果喜欢美式复古风格的，
一定知道了，这一定知道，这非常棒的一个品牌。
对，Jelado，
哎，有没有？刚好就走到了。对。
耶。
那 Jelado 呢？他前阵子有跟前 Redwing 的社长
对铃木理也先生
一起做了一个新的牌子，
对
，Two Monkeys。
Jelado 的社长后藤先生跟铃木先生两个等于是合作了一个共同品牌。
对，就两只猴子，对，
两只猴子对。那等一下呢，我们也跟铃木先生约好了，然后他会跟我们分享一下他就是这个品牌的理念，然后也会介绍一下这个他的产品，因为产品大家可能比较熟悉的是他的靴子，因为那靴子非常有特色。
对，因为毕竟铃木先生他从事这个业界非常久，所以他对于鞋子的设计，不管是年份、外形，各种都有非常深厚的研究。
我觉得他的鞋子等于是有把特色做出来，一个 signature 做出来。
对，因为其实这种我们讲复古风格，很多服饰店做出来的样子其实都大同小异。那他们
有可能会纯复刻啊。
对，就做起来就是会有一个大家都差不多。对，就可能皮料不一样。
例如奔达克好了，奔达克是
对，N One啊，那都大家都长差不多。
对，但是 The Two Monkeys 的产品一拿出来就，一看都知道是两只猴子。对吧？没错。对。然后包括除了鞋子之外呢，衣服也是，可能大家对衣服比较陌生，但是呢，等一下我们也会稍微请铃木先生介绍他衣服设计的理念。衣服设计也是比较早期的风格，
对，
有点是19世纪跟20世纪交接那种风格，对。那我们等一下
有趣啊，
就是这样进去看咯。
台北 curry rice. It's very difficult, but udon. I came from the udon country. Yeah, black, definitely black. Mountains. That's another difficult question, but football. Guria World. This is very difficult. Wesco or whites? Maybe whites. I'm sorry, Wesco team. I'm very sorry. Lace up. I would say Pitched Hill, which is close to Loga Hill. Tico, Chashin. My favorite leather. That's a very difficult question. Very difficult question. The horse butt is fascinating. It's very difficult to make shoes out of horse butt, especially if you try to make in a kind of mass production. But horse butt is really interesting leather, and as well as horse front, but some others. But yeah. The firstly, the two monkeys means the Yohei Goto, the president of Jelado, and myself, yes. Two monkeys. And in the beginning, the Yohei asked me to, help him to make a good boots, for Jelado brand, but we didn't have a clear idea which kind of boot it will be. So, we said let's try something fun, like a kind of two monkeys, the plays and having fun. So, this made a brand name, the two monkeys. And then, we started to talk about the specific design of the boot. And we made kind of samples, a few samples. One thing that I initially recommended to him, Yohei, as a kind of, the Jelado original boot, is a 1940s style hunting boot. It's a black Mokto boot in more, using more thicker leather and using a kind of, thicker rubber sole. It was a crepe sole, rubber crepe sole. And it looked good, but Yohei said, it looked not exactly like Michiya, because he knows I prefer something more classic, and I often remodel Redwing to make it look very classic, like kind of early century boots. And I wear something, sometimes, the French vintage or some clothing which looks like a kind of, the early century, late 19th century style. So he wanted me to rethink about that, and he wanted me to make the original boot much more like my own style. So I thought and came up with the idea of using this construction, Goodyear welt for the forepart and the Mackay for the waist and the heel, to make it look like a kind of classic handsome beveled waist, the dress or kind of the more non-work boot, and make a kind of upper design which we initially thought, which was mock-toe and black mock-toe, but I changed the leather to French calf based Tico leather, and actually this is a kind of French calf dyed in Japan to make it Tico. So this was made, and we called it sportive because in let's say early century, 30th century, 40th century, we found some vintage, the vintage hunting boot from USA, and it tended to be called sport boot. So made it a little bit French, because the source of the idea of making this kind of waist, squeezed waist, was from my French vintage boot.
Okay.
So I looked at it as a kind of French style, and they called it in French as sportive. The difference is the two monkeys. We have three staple styles of two monkeys today: sportive, vaudeville. I'm wearing vaudeville today, the brown version, and this sidecar boot. This is Elastos, and this they came from very old era, before the motorization. Let's say up to 1920s or before that, and this design idea came from the 1880s. But this Jelado booted line is exactly like a Jelado clothing. Jelado clothing, for example, denim pants and the denim jackets and the many other ones, based on Yohei's private collection of the American vintage clothing. And and many of them are from 1930s to 70s, 80s. We apply the same approach for the Jelado booted line. Having some original one from the Yohei's collection, and sometimes we redesign or sometimes trying to reproduce it. For example, this U.S. Navy service shoes is, this is what Yohei owns as one of his collection. This is probably 1940s, looking at this, the T-shape, backstay, the 6 pairs of the eyelet. This looks like 1940s, and I just happen to have at my house. I just happen to have this 1941. This is really, August 1941.
Yes.
It's stamped, and I got this last. So we decided to reproduce this using this last, but change the leather to this kind of corrected grain, polished leather. And the same for this engineer boot. Yohei used to have for a long time. Yohei even today have. This is in his collection for a long time. Even though this is steel toe and a bulky toe shape, this has a single leather sole and a very low block here. And this one, is quite rare in many engineer boots. The strap is sewn from the top of the shaft, and they have design like this. So we decided to make this one. Even though we changed the last and we changed the toe shape because we don't have the box toe here. We make the sole leather thin with leather, and the heel leather thin, even though we make a kind of disc type of the Usman heel, logger heel. And we replicate the design of this strap. We replicate this buckle shape. So this is a way how we make the Jelado booted line. And these, the two monkeys came from, basically I designed, sometimes having a kind of inspiration source from some vintage one or some old pictures, and redesign them to make it original. I decided to make this very unique comparing, in the boot market today, because there are many very good brands in Japan or outside Japan, making a kind of mid-century work boot very well. And some of them are my good friends, like Matsura-san making clinch, and Tokunaga-san making rolling up trio, and Suzuki-san brother bridge. So I didn't want to compete with them. I didn't want to go to the same market, to make the consumer choose either we go to this brand or the Two Monkeys. So I decided to make something very unique, which is not typical work boots. So even today, I'm explaining, they are not so-called work boots, like a Red Wing or like kind of those kind of things. But this is a boot that people, everybody wore before, they started to drive, before the car became quite popular means of the transportation. They don't have the road paved, and the many roads in the country town covered with a kind of soil, so it gets dusty on the sunny day, it gets muddy on the rainy day, and so everybody wear the boots like this. So the boots need to be very lightweight, flexible, so that everybody can comfortably wear.
Yes.
And that's the kind of concept behind the boot. So each boots are made with lightweight leather, very soft, flexible, and having this shape with a half maquet construction, and using leather as a material, sole become very light comparing to the thick rubber sole.
Yes.
So this become very light, even though I didn't really try to make it light, but I tried to replicate a kind of boot which everybody wore in the early 19th century, early 20th century or late 19th century. And this design is based on maybe the Victorian design, which is probably the picture that I've seen is many shoes, especially cycle boots in 1880s, 1890s. And they tend to have a kind of center seam upper.
Yes.
And the V or U shape, gore.
Yes.
And sometimes they have the toe cap, and the toe cap tend to be pointed up to, pointed toward the ankle.
Wow.
And this was not the exact shape that I took from the pictures, but this is something redesigned.
Yes.
But the cap, typical cap at the time, tend to be not straight, but have a kind of
Pointed,
pointed shape.
Angle,
Right, and this is a kind of decoration using stitching and the perforation. And this came from the one of the pictures that I've seen. It was not cycle boot, but it was a kind of boot for women.
Yes.
80s. Then they have this kind of thing, and I thought this was probably the original design of the leaf shape perforation, which we often see it in the semi-pro dress shoe. So I was interested in doing that. So these are the kind of areas that I'm looking at as a source of design for the Two Monkeys boot. Same as this boot, I'm trying to make something older, something older than 100 years ago. I'm trying to make a style, bring back the style older than 100 years ago. And sometimes this is I designed from the picture.
Okay.
And I called it French work blouse in English, but this is something I was inspired from the early Levi's thing called denim blouse. But blouse is a French word.
Yes.
Using workwear in general. So when I found the French picture, which is shown like a kind of this kind of jacket, what can I say? The rather short jacket, not the coat style, and having the big body, this kind of pin tuck, the 7 or 8 pin tucks, and the gathers on this type, and I have. This is very interesting because this kind of drapes happens because this cloth is using very broad cloth. This is just
easy to move.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's interesting. That's really made me think that this is much older than first Levi's denim style, even though there's no evidence to show it. But I suppose this is much older than the Levi's first denim jacket, and this kind of design should have existed in France. Might influence Levi's to make the denim boots. So I was very much interested. That might be one of the roots of denim jacket. Yeah. And one of the reasons that I thought it is this is the shirt that I wear today, but this is same. This is a kind of pattern, paper pattern, came from very old era. This type of pattern with a very broad use of the cloth, and make the shoulder smaller by making this gather, and using the back panel and the front panel from one cloth. So this is connected.
Wow.
And they put this type of triangle gusset to make the shoulder, fit to people's body, and using the sleeves came straight and in the same size from shoulder to calf. But in order to make the shoulder bigger, we use this gusset. In order to make this calf smaller, and use together. So this is a way that people made shirt very, very old time. And this jacket have a common element, the thinking behind how they made a pattern. Yeah. So it is another thing that I'm always making as a shirt. I made several different design of shirt based on this shape.
Yeah, they think of the function and the beauty.
Right, and it was interesting because if you think why they made this kind of pattern, one of the reasons that I suppose is, they cannot waste the fabric.
Oh.
They cannot waste the fabric, so use the fabric as its width, or cut the fabric in rectangle shape in order not to make any loss. And because fabric was very expensive at the time, people made the thread by spinning wheel, and people wave the fabric almost by hand power. So it was not like today. It's very different environment from today's the world that we live, and they made everything by hand, and some of the things that we can buy at a very cheap price was very expensive at the time. So that kind of things, if I imagine those kind of difference, it's very interesting. So I'm trying to make those totally different world, totally different part of the history as a story of this program. Right. This is a kind of today in best in English is this kind of sleeveless innerwear that we wear, the inside of the jacket. But when I study French in my university, the best is something like this. And I was wondering why. I didn't know why it was like that. Best in French is jacket, best in French is this kind of things. In French, this is gilet. Then, by looking at the history, I understand that, they are wearing this type of vest inside of the coat. Up to mid 18th century, something like 1750, they have the big wool vest, the kind of gentleman wore. They wear the big wool coat, and inside of the coat they have sleeved vest. But at around 1750, the vest become this shape. They took out the sleeves. Right. So the reason why the same word means something different between France and England is because of the history. So I found it interesting. So trying to make the vest based on this is 1735, picture. This is from 1760 picture, but both are same vest. But
they're both called vest.
Right. Yeah. We can use this complicated thing in the product name. So we call it as a kind of linen vest, and we call it as a linen coat. But
very interesting.
But the interesting thing that as I try to find a kind of a good inspiration source from the history of clothing history, I often find something very interesting, and I thought I tried to use it for the those kind of merchandise. I'm trying to continue, and with the help of Yohei of Jelado, I'm planning to continue gradually adding a new design, maybe one new design a year, because we are not really live upon shoes only. Jelado have so many different things to do, and we don't need to hurry up. So we are trying to adding one style per year or something like that. One style for the two monkeys, one style for the Jelado booted.
Okay.
And so it's a kind of we go not that fast. We are we are going step by step, but it will be probably end of January or beginning February next year that we're gonna present or announce our new style for next year's fall winter.
Okay, cool. Yeah, we're excited. Thank you for your time.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Coming
Thank
to
you.
Japan, taking the picture.